Okay, for 7.5, we want to put all this together now, and so you're going to try to write equations for these graphs. And this is where you really kind of put things together in your mind. So that's what we want to be doing. So we have some examples here. Here's a graph, and we want to try to figure out what the equation of this thing is. And I'm just going to go through the equation part, and then I'm going to show you the domain and all those other things, and you can just copy those down, or you can try them yourself. I take that back. We'll do this together. So domain. X can't be, what do I got there? -1. And it looks like it can't also be 1. Because I have a hole, I have a vertical asymptote. Range. Looks like the range is not going to include the y value of this hole and the horizontal asymptote here. That's not always the case. Sometimes you can cross, so we got to be careful with that. So far so good. We have this information. Now slant asymptote, I don't see any. And then the x-intercept. The x-intercept is going to play a role because that's going to help us in our numerator. So the x-intercept, there's one of them. That would be x is equal to -2. That's one of my zeros. Then my y-intercept looks like it's going to be 4. So that plays an important role too. And then holes, yes, we have one at 1, 3. That's the coordinates of the point of the hole. Remember, we always want to write those coordinates. Now, if we want to write the value of this function, first of all, I need to take care of my holes and my vertical asymptote. So I'm going to do that with my denominator. So I'm going to get an x plus 1. That's going to be one of my factors there. Then my hole is going to be at 1. So I'm going to get an x minus 1. Now in the numerator, I do know that I cross here at 2. So that would be x plus 2. So next I got to take care of this hole right here. Now with that hole, I need a factor in the numerator and the factor in the denominator that do cancel. So I get an x minus 1 here. So with those two canceling, that would sort me out. Now what happens though is that I also need a possibility of some value out in front here. And that's just like what we did with polynomials. There is an a value that possibly could be there. So we need to find out what that a value is. So what we should do is pick a point. You can pick various points, but the hole is also a good point to do. But when you do the hole, you don't plug it into this piece. You just plug it into this remaining piece. So that's what I'm going to do, is plug in 1, 3. Take the point 1, 3 and plug it in. I can ignore this piece because it's going to cancel, and so I just have this. So I set up this equation. Now if you look at this, I can multiply both sides by 2/3, so I get a is equal to 2. So finally, my equation is going to be 2x plus 2, x minus 1, all over x plus 1, x minus 1. We're probably not going to have you expand that out, but that's what we want to look at. So just remember that this a value here will have to be found. And then we found it to be 2. Next example. Sorry, to summarize this one then, this is the final equation, and y equal to 2 is the horizontal asymptote, and that is what our a value is. So in the next example, we have this. X can't be, well, if you look at this, this one has a slant asymptote. So we got to deal with that, but it should take care of itself as long as we look at having the degree in the numerator being 1 more than the degree in the denominator. So I have all these different pieces of information. I'm going to let you sort that out for yourself. You should be good at that. And then we want to try to write this equation. So now what do we do with f of x? Well, I see that first of all I have a hole. So when I have a hole, I got to put in an x minus 4 and an x minus 4, top and bottom. And then I also see that my x-intercepts, that will be in the numerator. Remember, the zeros come from the numerator, so I'm going to have an x plus 2 and an x minus 2. Now right now my degree in the numerator is 3. My degree in the denominator is 1. I still have to deal with one more point here, or one more value here for my denominator, or one more x I should say. Where am I going to get that last one? Well, that last one does come from my vertical asymptote because I'm going to be dividing by 0. So with that, I get a vertical asymptote that has the x. Now the last thing we should do is figure out what this a value is. Well, as long as plugging in the 4, 3 works, let's check that out and see if it works, then we don't need that a value. Plus we don't have a horizontal asymptote here, so we possibly won't worry about it. If I do plug in this 0.43, I'm going to get a 6 times 2, which is 12, divided by my 4, which gives me my 3, and that's where the hole is anyways, so it does work. So I don't need any kind of leading coefficient here. Okay, next example. Once again, domain -1 and 6 are my two values that I don't have. Those are vertical asymptotes, so I have those items there. My range is all reals because this middle one takes up everything. Slant asymptote, there's none. X-intercepts, -3, 0, and 2, 0. That would be that one right there. And my y-intercept would be 0, -3. Holes, none. So if I want to deal with the horizontal asymptote here, which would be y equal to -3. That's y equal to -3 there. What I need to do is make sure that I sort that out once I figure out the equations of this. So writing the equation, let's try it. So I can do my vertical asymptotes first. So I see a x plus 1. I also see a x minus 6. Those will be my two vertical asymptotes that I'm dealing with on this graph. Then my numerator, I need the zeros. So if I put in my x plus 3 and my x minus 2, I should be in business. I don't have a hole, so I don't have to put in two factors that cancel here. Now the last thing we need to do is figure out what this leading coefficient is. Well, the shortcut way is to actually just look at this value right here. What's my horizontal asymptote? That will end up being my A value because I know that this is going to be some x squared over x squared. X squared over x squared equals 1, but I got to get to -3. So A has to equal -3. So in writing this in finality would be -3, x plus 3, x minus 2, all over x plus 1, x minus 6. So in finally, summary, what you want to do then is put all your undefined points down in the denominator. If it's a hole, match it up in the numerator. If it's a vertical asymptote, then you just would have those values, those factors in the denominator. The zeros will go into the numerator. And then go ahead and find your A value, which turns out to be just the horizontal asymptote that we do have. That's it. All right, I hope you can put all this together, and then you have your worksheets for 7.5 to go ahead and finish. On the A&M stuff, they're listed as 6.7, I believe. Thanks. Have a great day.